bitches!
Oh, we are indeed back, and what better way to celebrate the second season coming out than by releasing another part of my ongoing review. This is part 2 of Mission Yozakura Family. If you don't want to be spoiled, then I highly recommend checking out part 1, which will be in the description below or appear in the top right corner on YouTube. And if you enjoyed that video, then please subscribe and check out my other videos for more underrated manga reviews. So, the last time we left our chaotic family of super spies, they had teamed up with Hinage-kun to take down Tampopo, defeated and arrested Kawashita, and rescued their mother's raised body from being further exploited to create man-made Yozakura blood drug. There's still an ongoing threat involving their estranged father Momo, but before I talk about him, there are several things I need to mention. For starters, there's a new addition to the family in the form of this experimental girl named Ai. She was a part of Tampopo, carrying Goliath's mutant dog genes, and Rin wants her to be integrated into society after Tampopo was disbanded, which includes the death of her previous caretaker, Mizuki. Chapter 86 focuses on her and her adjustment in the family, and luckily, Tayo and Mutsumi are more than happy to take the young girl under their wing, treating her as their own daughter. But no amount of playing house to being treated with a sense of normalcy can erase the trauma of her childhood, nor her grief over Mizuki. It's why she attempts to run away, and I love how it was Tayo that finds her and convinces her to stay, as he understands more than anyone what it's like to be an outsider in a family, that hesitation to be involved and the feeling of being a burden, believing it would be better if you were alone. It's a nice moment that showcases Tayo's empathy, and I'm sure many people who have chosen families would resonate with this. While Tayo managed to solve one issue, he has still yet to bring up the memories he saw during his fight with Kawashita to the rest of the family, and unfortunately he won't get that chance just yet, as his blooming powers are going haywire and it was about to be consumed by them until a certain first head helped them out. Well, I did say I was going to talk about her. I always keep my promises. Mostly. Like I said before, while the current Yozakura sees their abilities as just an extension of themselves, Tsubame, as the origin of so many and the direct ancestor of the unique genetic abilities, she views her powers differently. And who can blame her, as this power was sprung... Tsubame sprung... I can't believe I unintentionally put that in my script, but I'm still keeping it. The power was sprung onto her without any explanation, and we all know what happens when a superpower person is revered as a god. It's no wonder that Tsubame resented her powers, as she was given the Hollywood star treatment, being treated as nothing more than a resource to be used and capitalized over several hundred years. It's why she was willing to team up with Kawashita to begin the project of having the everyday person receive the Yozakura blood, because if everyone has superpower genes, then no one would be. Tsubame is fully aware of how selfish this is and how it could potentially ruin the lives of her current descendants, but she doesn't care. Now, with all this in mind, some of you might be questioning why Tsubame suddenly helped Tayo. And the easiest way I can explain this is that after having been experimented on for centuries, it caused Tsubame's mind to fracture, similar to a split personality, where the Tsubame that occupies Kawashita's mind and the one that we saw in the flashback is the current Tsubame, while the other one, who helped Tayo calm the blood that Kawashita gave him during the fight, is the inner conscious past Tsubame. For convenience sake, I'll be referring to past and present Tsubame as two separate people, so it'll be easier on you guys and me. Past Tsubame appeared to Tayo in a dream, explaining their situation, asking Tayo to do something that will be the main objective for the rest of the manga. She wants him to kill her. Sounds reasonable and simple enough. However, to do that, Tayo must first seek out an ancient Yozakura book that contains past information about her to prove that she's not lying and relay that information to Kawashita. The problem is, he's held up in a maximum security prison where only high-ranking officials have the clearance to speak to him without supervision. So, on top of getting that book, Tayo has to earn a silver rank spy license. Luckily, getting a silver license is as easy as getting a bronze one. The problem lies with the examiners, as it's always gold-ranking officials, and conveniently this time it's Shinzo, Futaba, and Kyoichiro that are the licensed examiners. At least Tayo has an edge in knowing who he's going to be up against during the exam, but the older siblings are definitely not going to make it easy to pass their test. Especially Kyoichiro, who has been keeping a close eye on Tayo after Kawashita's defeat, quickly deducing what Tayo is after, and question why is he trusting someone who is one of the people responsible for harming their family. Tayo responds by saying he would rather use this opportunity to find out who's targeting Mutsumi, and by extension the family, rather than being left in the dark. Kyoichiro acknowledges Tayo's drive to protect Mutsumi, but that drive can only take him so far, as he believes he's still not enough to take on this task. However, during the fight, thanks to some help from past Tsubame, Tayo awakens Tsubame's blood inside him to activate an ancient technique called the profuse blooming of 10,000 flowers. With this new power, Tayo manages to break through Koichiro's defenses, winning him his silver license and Koichiro's praise. With both items checked off his list, it was time to see Kawashita, who looks a little worse for wear as the Tsubame blood inside him is starting to overtake and consume him. Knowing he doesn't have much time left, Kawashita figures out why Tayo is here and it tells him everything he knows about Tsubame. From how the profuse blooming is a double-edged sword of draining your body at the cost of power, to explaining how the book is only visible to those who have the ancient blooming but is essential in destroying Tsubame, to even telling Tayo the constant growing battle Tsubame had between her Somani and her body and her healing factor, as she knew eventually, despite being somewhat immortal, she will lose her memories and her mind will no longer be hers anymore, becoming nothing more than an empty shell that is fueled by anger and suffering. Adding on another layer to her tragic character, again, Tsubame never asks for this. At most, she only wanted to heal people, but certain key details came into play that caused everything to happen, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Kawashita tells Tayo another secret about the profuse blooming, how it has a resonating effect with other ancient users, kind of like being a branch of a tree and Tsubame is the seed. It's the reason why Kawashita knew the purpose of Tayo's visit, as he's able to sense the connection between Tsubame and Tayo. There's someone else who has Tsubame's blood and is probably aware of the meeting Kawashita is having with Tayo, but before Kawashita could reveal anything more, of course, he was stopped by the main antagonist of this second half of the manga, Momo Yozakura. Oh, Momo. Momo. Easily one of my favorite villains in the manga. While his future actions are deplorable, the circumstances that will be revealed later on makes this situation a lot more complex than one might think. Make no mistake, this guy is a terrible father for putting his kids through these dreadful events. However, as the manga goes along, it starts to become obvious that certain complicated elements put Momo's motivations into a more gray area. But I won't get into that until much later in the video, so let's get back to the plot. While the rest of the family has some quality time battling their father, Kawashita continues his conversation with Tayo, and there are some pretty shocking reveals during this fight. Not only is Momo himself the culprit behind the kidnapping and the tragic incident all those years ago, but he's also Tsubame's child. Kind of. It's basically test tube baby logic, as Momo is composed of pure Somani byproducts and genetically is the same as Tsubame, and it gets proven almost right away as Momo absolutely solos and dominates the battlefield against the family. With his dying breath, so final act. With his final act, Kawashita offers Tayo to absorb the highly crystallized Somani in his body to give Tayo a fighting chance in mastering the profuse blooming, since it requires a massive concentration of Tsubame's blood in their body. Naturally, Tayo accepts, and while Momo senses this and tries to stop them, he's too late as Kawashita starts to decay. And since there's nothing left for him to attain or do, Momo dips out as well. So the plan is now to figure out what Momo is after using the ancient book and the profuse blooming from Tayo. And can I say that the pacing for this second half of the manga is pretty good? I mentioned in my last video that the manga balances the family's goofy slice of life shenanigans with the plot. And I believe it really shines in this section because not only do many of the lighthearted chapters have setups that will have relevance to the plot, but the manga also showcases different relationship dynamics we haven't seen so far. Like Shion trying to help Futaba with her computer problems, which is the equivalent of helping my grandma with anything technology related. Tayo playing mediator between Futaba and Kyoichiro, which is like trying to prevent two headstrong typhoons from destroying each other and everything else around them. And Kengo, Nano, and Tayo acting like the little brothers they are and spying on Shinzo and his date with Ayaka. It's not really a date, Shinzo is just going shopping and Ayaka is accompanying him. At least the brothers get some karma when Shinzo shows them his brotherly love. If brotherly love looks like this. And before I move on to the rest of the story, and because I couldn't find a good placement anywhere else in my script, I want to highlight some of my favorite chapters from this section. Chapter 116 stars Shinzo in a bodybuilding contest, competing to win a special ally for Shion to upgrade her equipment in the Momo tracker, despite his obvious fears. He wins the competition at the end, and I love this nice moment where Shion wanted to back out earlier for Shinzo's sake, but Shinzo wanted to keep going because, for once, he felt he could be relied on as an older sibling. There's nothing really else I can really add on to. It's just a nice, hilarious chapter featuring one of the manga's most underrated characters. Chapter 109 is all about Kengo, as he's experiencing one of the worst days of his life when he finds acne on his face. He drags Taya around to try to see if he can solve this using his usual methods, but to no avail. It's only when it's late at night and everyone has gone to bed that Futaba knows why he has acne. He's just stressed out after seeing Futaba badly hurt from her fight that I'll get to in a couple of minutes. She knew something like this would happen after a similar event when their father disappeared, or any event that involved trouble in the family. But Kengo would rather avoid talking about himself, which is ironic, and focus on supporting his family in his own way. It's only when Futaba reassures Kengo that she'll be fine and it's okay to let your guard down around family that Kengo is finally able to relax enough to clear his acne. It's one of the more memorable chapters I always come back to as it displays Kengo's insecurity and vulnerable side while also giving Kengo and Futaba's relationship a serious sweet moment. Finally, the last chapter I want to mention is chapter 115, where the family decides to take a break from checking clues about Momo's whereabouts and have a movie night. Some movie picks were obvious, others depressing, and one that was unexpected. Then, Tayo and Mutsumi share a moment after everyone falls asleep, where Tayo expresses doubt about whether it was okay to relax like this in spite of the imposing danger. However, Mutsumi counters that that's exactly why they're doing this, telling him not to overthink things and to enjoy this life they work so hard to protect. Things may look uncertain for now, but that shouldn't stop them from trying to find ways to be happy despite the difficult times. An advice that is surprisingly relevant considering what's going on in the world right now, where optimism is struggling to stay alive. But I think that's enough yapping for now, and it's time to get back to the main plot. Things start to pick up around chapter 106 after Shion's old man Hunter Tracker detected a strong Someni presence inside a old Yozakura property called Nionome Manor. Tayo, Shinzo, and Futaba accompany Shion in her investigation where they find the manga's biggest missed opportunity in the form of the resurrected previous generational heads. God, that was a mouthful. As much as I want to go into detail about this, I need to hold off until I make my inevitable part 3 to compare this idea to what we ended up with for final antagonists. Sorry non-manga readers, you're gonna have to wait another year to find out. Anyway, the family finds second head Lady Ninome, who is more than happy to help with whatever her mother Tsubame has planned, gravely injuring Futaba in the process and destroying the manor before disappearing. After another search through the family records and Old Man Hunter, they found another location that could be linked to their father called the Yozakura Silk Mill. There, they find fifth head Itsuwa, who, unlike Ninome, isn't too happy with her corpse being defiled and used for President Tsubumi's gain, and urges the family to put her to rest. Since they have a willing ally, Itsuwa reveals that President Tsubumi has been planting roots throughout Japan to preserve her longevity and is using her blood to awaken powers in the revived heads to protect those roots, hence the black roots we see surrounding the heads. And if you haven't already guessed it by now, this power also applies to Mutsumi, as President Tsubumi shows up to prevent its wife from revealing anything else and tells the family that the bond between her and Mutsumi has awakened, as Mutsumi begins to fall ill with cherry blossoms growing out of her head. Thanks to Kawashita and Momo's efforts when Mutsumi was kidnapped, Tsubumi is now ready to harvest her. Luckily, Itsuwa managed to break free of Tsubumi's hold and tells the family the only way to save Mutsumi is to cut off Tsubumi's roots and the past heads before her body gets absorbed by President Tsubumi. Tayo manages to cut the roots using profuse blooming, gaining the family a temporary victory while Tsubumi plans her next steps. A couple of days pass and Tayo suddenly notices something wrong. Kyoichiro has disappeared! Nah, I'm just joking around, but the family, except for Tayo, are pretty nonchalant about the news as they believe Kyoichiro is just taking some alone time. He even display images of himself around the house to remind the family of him. Narcissistic much? But that normal habit was only a decoy, as towards the end of the day, they discovered two major clues that hint at Kyoichiro possibly tackling Tsubumi and her revived past heads on his own. And they're proven right, as Kyoichiro confronts the previous heads to permanently sever President Tsubumi's connection with Mutsumi and get this over with. When the rest of the family finally tracks down Kyoichiro, we see that he actually managed to do it. Yep, all of the previous heads are killed off, and again, I plan to go into detail in my part 3 video about how this was wasted potential. In spite of the immediate danger being quelled, Kyoichiro distances himself from the family and disappears, telling everyone that he won't see them anymore. This almost causes a fight amongst the siblings until Shinzo suggests that regrouping and staying together is the best course of action to figure out what the hell was that all about. We get several scenes of each of the siblings using their skills to find Kyoichiro while reminiscing about how their older brother means to them, and I think now is a good segue to talk about Kyoichiro's character in full. So we all know who Kyoichiro is. Observant, competent, absurdly creepy and cliquey about his little sister to the point where I call him a dark version of Major Hughes. But the one thing I never further elaborated on is his love for his family. From early as the second chapter, Kyoichiro stated,
"In this world where you should doubt even yourself, there is one thing that you can trust. And that would be us, the family. As much as I would love to kill you, I would sacrifice myself for you in a heartbeat."
Which... I wish I could say more, but I can't. It's too soon. I'm not spoiling that moment yet, but if you know, you know. It makes sense that he would say that considering he's the oldest. However, I can imagine there's a certain weight Kyoichiro puts on himself to maintain the facade of the eldest child. It's been heavily implied that after the major tragedy that resulted in his mother's death and their father abandoning them, Kyoichiro took on the heavy responsibility to look after his siblings. Similar to how Nani was forced to step up as Lilo's guardian after their parents passed away, both characters were pushed into positions they weren't ready for, but they're willing to sacrifice everything and themselves to ease the burden off their younger siblings and keep the family together. The chapter that best describes what I'm talking about is chapter 99, when Kyoichiro accidentally took some medicine to revert him to a small child. Which won't be the first nor the last time the manga will use this trope. While his personality is a lot brighter compared to how he usually is, the manga still reminds us that this is still Kyoichiro, as when he goes to bed, he tells Tayo he's aware that his mother is dead now, but is thankful for everyone's efforts in making sure he doesn't find out about Rei's grave. He had a feeling that something terrible was going to happen to the family even back then, and knew, as the eldest sibling, he would have to step up and become strong enough to protect everyone, despite fearing what he would become. When I got to this panel, my jaw visibly dropped, because this moment says everything. The fact that he was ready to risk it all, knowing that it might turn him into something unpleasant, and was scared about it, shows his undying dedication to his family that, god damn it, I can really respect. He's the only member of the family who you feel like always has a mask on and keeps his burdens locked away, which sounds similar to Kengo, but with Kyoichiro, it's like he can't afford to be let down his guard because he's the oldest. He has to be the strong and reliable one for Mutsumi and the others to depend on, lest everything falls apart. This is why he's my favorite character, and even though he would never, ever, ever say this out loud unless he wants to sully his pride, a part of him is thankful that Tayo came into the family and that Mutsumi has someone like him protecting her. He's still gonna give him shit regardless, but let's be real, this is how his usual sibling dynamic goes. Bro already accepts Tayo as a part of the family. The two of them are actually quite similar than one will ever admit, and it's probably why Kyoichiro was okay with tasking Tayo with the special mission of retrieving Rei's corpse, and if something should ever happen to him, to head to the Spy Association headquarters and speak to its president, Kai Itsumo. Kai has an interesting relationship with Kyoichiro as he's the only person who sees through Kyoichiro's facade, and one of the few people that Kyoichiro respects and could call a good friend. Although that definition of a good friend could depend on what part of the fandom you ask.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
Kai explains to Tayo that, like him, he was brought into the spy world after losing his family in an accident that resulted in his brain being overstimulated, and believes that Tayo's profuse blooming can be the key to bringing Kyoichiro back. Perfect timing too, because Futaba just notified Tayo that they found and surrounded Kyoichiro. To nobody's shock, there's a reason why Kyoichiro suddenly up and left without explaining anything. While defeating the revived heads was relatively easy, they left him with a poison surprise trap card that embedded itself inside Kyoichiro, which will kill him from the inside out and the rest of the family if he touches them. And instead of informing his siblings about the situation and trying to figure out a way to cure him, just like the frustrating self-sacrificial person he is, he went with the injured wolf dying in the forest alone route, not realizing that his selfless action is about to cause more suffering and heartbreak. During the fight, Tayo realizes what Kai was talking about as his profuse blooming appears to dissipate the black flowers surrounding Kyoichiro. The manga doesn't give a proper explanation, but my interpretation was that his original hardening blooming, combined with the infused Tsubumi and Kawashita Someini, formed a regenerative power of sorts. Kyoichiro may have distanced himself for the love of his family, believing his life doesn't matter, but he's just as important as everyone else. Tayo cures Kyoichiro, and Kyoichiro humbly accepts his punishment, as well as a few others that his family might cook up. But at least the family is united again. Tsubumi is probably slowly dying somewhere, and everything is right in the world. Oh, I almost forgot Momo was in this story. Momo then appears before the family and has what I call "it was me" Barry moment, as he reveals that everything that has happened in the manga so far was because of him. And the purpose? To apparently revive Rei and become a family again, as he shows everyone her heart. My question about all this is, why? Why involve yourself in a dangerous organization and a mentally unstable immortal when all you wanted to do was spend more time with your wife and kids? I know in hindsight it makes sense as it plays into a major plan that's unfolding that we'll get into later, but it is amusing looking back at this and remembering my initial confused reaction to this. Momo starts to have a mental breakdown after the family reasonably declines his insane offer after everything he put them through. The only one who still cares about him is Mutsumi. It's why she agreed to a neutral beat-up he planned to try to reason with him. But no amount of reasoning can fix what's no longer there, and just like always, Momo escapes. And if that wasn't enough, immediately after losing Momo, Kyoichiro receives a call from Kai summoning him, Futaba, Shinzo, and to some extent Tayo to a Go-Rank spy meeting. The meeting revolves around Momo, who seemed to take the rejection well. And by well, I mean summoning root monsters that Tsubumi created for him called Dark Cherries to kill and dispose of multiple spy associates and post them on the dark web, which isn't too far from how real-life exes will sometimes take their vengeance on. And since this is a Yozakura problem, the meeting is also about to discuss the expulsion of the Yozakura family from the Spy Association, only for that to be put on hold as somehow Momo found out and threatened to blow up the spy headquarters with Black Root time bombs, causing the family and the rest of the Go-Rank spies to split up and stop the bombs. That's basically the equivalent of you going to jail because everyone knows that your best friend is a mass murderer, only for that best friend to hold the jailer at gunpoint, telling them to let you go. And then makes threats to blow up the jailhouse and extends that threat to a mysterious figure who still poses a problem. A mysterious figure that will reveal itself very, very soon. So, between losing and bringing back Kyoichiro, hearing Momo's delusional plan, and practically getting removed from the spy agency, I haven't mentioned the craziest part that happens in this section of the manga. During the mission to remove the bombs, Momo just casually shows up saying he's here to pick up his kids. And unexpectedly, both Shinzo and Futaba are willing to come with him and stop anyone who gets in Momo's way, with the worst case being their No, I'm not finishing that sentence. But they do sport black hair now, obviously hinting at them being mind controlled, which was Momo's true plan all along. Because if they're not gonna come with him willingly, then might as well force them. Because yeah, that sounds like what a loving, caring father would do.
I'm respecting your privacy by knocking, but asserting my authority as your father by coming in anyway!
Momo gets away again, but this time with Shinzo and Futaba in tow. He still kept his word by releasing a bomb to blow up the spy headquarters, but Kyoichiro stopped it before it could cause any damage. Since this is a family matter, and because they already set the condition to be accepted back into the agency, the rest of the family regroups once again and plans to save their siblings and finally end this Momo fiasco once and for all. Dragging them is no issue, the problem is deciding who will fight whom. In the end, Taiyo volunteers to take on Shinzo with Kengo backing him up. Nano and Shion will handle and subduing Futaba because there's no way on God's green earth that two support units will brute force their way into defeating a powerhouse like Futaba. And Kyoichiro will deal with Momo, who I imagine has been waiting for this. When they get to Momo's ship hideout, Taiyo and Kengo try to see if they can break the mind control using Nano's cure, but of course it doesn't work. There's something going on with Shinzo and Futaba than a simple brainwashing. So the only option left for now is to have a blooming ballroom blitz! Except for Kyoichiro. There's a reason why Kyoichiro hasn't activated his blooming so far. Something about collateral damage? You'll see. Things were actually going well with Kengo using his stimulation to delve into Shinzo's mind to try to remove the brainwashing, and Shion relying on one of Futaba's weaknesses and developing a strategy around it. But to no one's surprise, everything starts to go wrong as we finally get to see Momo's blooming called Dreams, which lulls the victim into a hypnotic state and pulls them into his ideal dream, where their memories get altered and pain and suffering no longer exist. It's how Shinzo and Futaba were able to retain their personality and thought process despite being influenced. It almost sounds like a cult in a way, which is terrifying to think about. Using the black cherry roots, Momo summons a large tree onto the ship and lulls almost everyone into his dreamscape, except for Taiyo and Kyoichiro, with Taiyo using Perfume's blooming and Kyoichiro using his silk spider to form a barrier. Taiyo was about to be caught up in a dream, but Kyoichiro stopped Momo from doing anything else to him. And even when Kyoichiro got caught up in his own dream, if Chapter 99 hadn't sold me on Kyoichiro, this moment definitely did. As Kyoichiro literally and figuratively shreds the illusion that Momo could use his blooming to love him again, when he never lost it in the first place. In fact, it's because Kyoichiro loves his father that part of him was hopeful that they could be a family again despite knowing it was impossible. So, just like he promised Momo all those years ago, Kyoichiro opens his eyes and activates his blooming for the first time. Yes, I said the first time. It turns out that Kyoichiro was a late bloomer and awakened his power after seeing Momo in that fire surrounded by Rei and Mutsumi. And all that anger and rage built up inside of him triggered his blooming, deciding that the one who caused it should be the one who will experience it firsthand. And if you want to talk about aura farming, here's your aura farming! Nothing screams badassery more than having the literal ability to summon a black hole. There's a reason why Kyoichiro ordered everyone to get off the boat if they managed to retrieve their siblings. Dude was not joking around about his blooming being collateral. And I cannot wait for this panel to be finally animated in the anime. Kyoichiro's blooming void causes everything and anyone to be sliced up by Kyoichiro's threads, bit by bit, until there's nothing left, with the only ones being spared being Taiyo and the rest of the family as they're protected by them. Kyoichiro bids farewell to Momo as he decomposes. However, just before he dissipates, Momo regains some semblance of clarity and reveals to Taiyo and Kyoichiro the memory of what happened before the events of the tragedy. As it turns out, this whole ordeal was a part of their plan to expose the true enemy of the Yozakuras. Rei has suspicions after hearing contradicting stories regarding Tsubumi and knew that there had to be someone manipulating the family from the start. So she purposely sacrificed herself, believing it was necessary to reveal the true mastermind and protect her children, which is such a crazy gamble. But I think it's because she was relying on Momo to infiltrate Tampopo and have the enemy show themselves, as she performed a blood vow to help him resist some of Tsubumi's influence. It explains several moments in the manga where Momo seems to fight against himself, as if someone was preventing him from causing more harm to the family. This is one of the reasons why I left Momo as a villain beyond the split personality parallels he shares with Tsubumi, because even when he had his insane moments and was scarily competent in accomplishing his goals, there was always a feeling in the back of my mind that something was going on behind the scenes. And when it was revealed, it showed a man who was a prisoner in his own mind, who didn't have any memories before joining the family and was reluctant to even take part in this plan. But for the sake of the family who truly accepted him, he was willing to continue with this in the hopes that Rei's gamble pays off. And my god, did it pay off big time. Just before Momo gives Taiyo something important, the entire room freezes over and stops Kyoichiro's void, where the true endgame villain and the real mastermind behind everything makes his debut. Asa, Tsubumi's father. Right off the bat, you can tell this guy is off-putting. With his realistic fish lens eyes, expressionless face, and the cold and detached way he carries himself. Almost like he's a scientist who had to physically step into the experiment because his specimens were becoming too much for it. He doesn't even elaborate on himself. He just shows up, monologues about how the Yozakura blood is precious and how only he can decide what's best for them, and leaves, taking Rei's heart and what's left of Momo before the ship blew up. On the bright side, everyone else is back to normal, and Momo was able to give Taiyo the important piece that will aid them when the time comes. Things start to settle down for a bit until one day, during Taiyo and Mitsumi's wedding anniversary, past Tsubumi shows up unconscious at their door, taking refuge after escaping from Asa's captivity. It looks like that beating Kyoichiro dealt with the family heads had a severe effect on her, as her form has regressed to that of a small child. After discovering a chip is embedded onto her body, the family unravels a whole new set of issues. It turns out that Asa has been keeping tabs on them this whole time for the purpose of harvesting and controlling the Yozakura bloodline. Keiko and Bon are fine for the time being and they can take care of themselves. However, for the rest of them, they have 5 or 6 years until Asa comes back for them once he believes they reach maturity. And when he shows up to collect Tsubumi and confirm everything that they found, it's practically unsettling about the inhumane way Asa talks about his daughter in the current Yozakura generation. Almost as if they're like cattle or plants to him. It's a great way of setting up Asa as the final antagonist. Luckily, Tsubumi, before she unfortunately left with her father, imparted the family with a final clue that will take him to uncover Momo's final message and plan to take down Asa. He explains that he left behind each family member a personal training advice letter on how to get stronger, believing that it will take them 5 years if they accept it and hoping that it will be enough to defeat him. Despite the initial skepticism considering everything they faced so far, Mutsumi agrees to this plan as the family head. I mean, what else are they gonna do? Wait it out until they get one-shotted by the boss? Might as well take the opportunity. So everyone leaves the manor to begin their 5-year-long journey to get stronger, except for Taiyo and Mutsumi who stayed behind. The future may be muddled, but for now, the best thing that they can do is to keep trying their hardest and live on. I think this is another good stopping place. Thankfully, there's only one more part of this review series I need to cover and discuss. While I do have some issues with certain plot points and ideas in the final act, this manga delivered on one of the best manga endings I've read in current year. And considering that this is a Shonen Jump manga, that is a high bar to achieve. So if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you won't miss out when I release the final part of Mission Yozakura Family. And if you read the manga or watched the latest season of the anime, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Until then, thanks for watching everyone. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell for more of my manga related content. I hope you have a decent day and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Take a deep breath,